Today's revision part is Unit 4, Pharmaceutical Analysis, that is redox titration. So in which we are going to discuss about oxidation, reduction, dichrometry, iodimetry, iodometry, serimetry, bromatometry, and iodometry. Redox titration. What is redox titration? With the redox titration, so which is also called to be oxidation reduction titration. So why? Because oxidation and reduction will be performed simultaneously at the same time. So that's why this is called redox titrations. Okay, but here important point to remember is, so these redox titrations are performed under acidic medium. So this acidic medium, sometimes neutral medium is also applicable, but mostly acidic medium is useful for this redox titration. Whereas in case of complexometric titration, so we need to perform that complexometric titration in the presence of basic medium. Okay, so this is the main important difference that we need to identify. And what is oxidation and what is reduction? So many students are getting confused with this oxidation and reduction. Why? Because here we have many important terms. So that is oxidation, oxidizing agent, oxidant. In the same way, reduction, reducing agent, and reductant. Right? So we need to know about these terms clearly so that we can easily identify what is oxidizing agent, what is reducing agent, and how it is helpful for the redox titration, right? So what is oxidation? So oxidation is loss of electrons. Okay, so here we can see in the reaction. So here ferrous ion gets lost one electron and getting converting into ferric ion. So ferrous ions are oxidized and getting converting into ferric ion. So how can we know that it is oxidized? Here electron is lost. Okay, and there is another definition is there, that loss of hydrogens. For example, so hydrogen sulfide is having two hydrogens, so these two hydrogens get lost, right? And so here these two hydrogens are accepted by oxygen, right? So that's why here hydrogen sulfide is oxidized, is oxidized. At the same time, oxygen will be reduced. So why? Because two hydrogens are lost by sulfur and two hydrogens are accepted by oxygen, right? So loss of hydrogen is called to be oxidation. And the next one is gain of oxygen. Gain of oxygen is also called to be oxidation, right? Why? Because here sulfur dioxide will be accepting one oxygen molecule, oxygen atom, and it is converting into sulfur trioxide, right? So loss of electrons, loss of hydrogens. So these two are looking similar. That means both are getting lost, and gain of oxygen, right? So this is called to be oxidation. And coming to the reduction, so here, so this is completely opposite to the oxidation process. So how it is opposite? So in oxidation, so we can see the loss of electrons, but whereas in case of reduction, we can see the gain of electrons. Why? Because here oxidation and reduction will be taking place simultaneously at the same time. So one molecule is oxidizing, so that means one molecule is giving electrons, and that electron will be accepted by another molecule, right? So that's why reduction will be taking place at the same time when oxidation is taking place in the reaction. Okay, so what is reduction? Here it is gaining the electrons. Gain of electrons is called to be reduction. Why? Because the electrons will be coming from the oxidizable substance, right? For example, ferric ion, that is Ce plus 4, so will be accepting one electron and gets converted into Ce plus 3, that is ferrous ion. And one more definition is there, that gain of hydrogens. So here we can see in the oxidation process, loss of hydrogens. So hydrogens will be lost here in oxidation process. But whereas in case of reduction, here hydrogens get gained. That means the compound will be getting the hydrogens. For example, acetylene will be accepting two hydrogens and gets converted into ethylene, right? So that means acetylene is taking 2 hydrogens, it gets reduced to form ethylene. And the third definition is loss of oxygen. Okay, loss of oxygen. So this is also the complete opposite to the oxidation process. Here in the oxidation process, we can see gain of oxygen. Oxygen will be added to the substance, but here oxygen will be lost from the substance. Example, cupric oxide will be releasing oxygen atom, so that cupric oxide gets converted into copper ion, right? So here oxygen is gets separated, oxygen is released from the cupric oxide compound. So this is also called to be reduction, right? So here in redox titration, so both oxidation and reduction will be taken place simultaneously. At the same time, one compound is releasing electrons and releasing oxygen, and the other compound will be accepting the electrons as well as accepting the oxygens. So one compound is taking the oxygen and another compound is releasing the oxygen. One compound is releasing the hydrogen and another compound is accepting the hydrogen. Next one is oxidation reduction reaction. So how it is occurred? So here we need to know about what is oxidizing agent or oxidant and what is reducing agent or reductant. So generally we are getting confused with oxidizing agent and reducing agent. Okay, so what is oxidizing agent? So here oxidizing agent is an agent which oxidizes adjacent substance by accepting electron. So that means oxidizing agent is not, it is getting oxidized itself. It is useful for oxidizing the adjacent compound. For example, so here we have C+4, that is ferric ions. So ferric ion is acting as an oxidizing agent. So that means the ferric ion will be useful for oxidizing the ferrous ion. So that's why the ferrous ion Fe+2 gets converted into Fe+3. So increase of oxidation number is also called to be oxidation, right? So how this ferrous ion gets converted into ferric ion? Due to presence of oxidizing agent. So what is oxidizing agent will do? So oxidizing agent is an agent which oxidizes the adjacent compound, right? So for example, so ferric ion is converting into ferrous ion, and so what is happening here? So here ferric ion itself gets reduced, but ferric ion is useful for oxidizing the adjacent compound, right? So here there is a small difference is there, that so ferric ion is an oxidizing agent, so which oxidizes the adjacent compound, but itself the ferric ion will be reduced. Okay, in the same way, reducing agent. So what is reducing agent? Reducing agents which reduces the adjacent compound, but actually reducing agent itself get oxidized. For example, so here ferrous ion is a reducing agent, so which reduces the adjacent compound. What is the adjacent compound here? Here ferric ion is the adjacent compound. So what is happening here? The ferric ion gets converted into ferrous ion. So ferric ion is having +4 charge and it is converting into +3 charge. So that means reduction is taking place. So how reduction is taking place? So due to presence of reducing agent, the adjacent compound get reduced. So what about the ferrous ion? So ferrous ion gets oxidized. So here the ferrous ion is reducing agent itself get oxidized to form ferric ion, right? So this is the difference, a small difference. So we need to identify. So we should not confuse, right? So this is very much important. And there are other important oxidizing agents also there, like potassium dichromate. Okay, and the reducing agents also there, that is sodium thiosulfate and arsenic dioxide, right? So these examples also should be mentioned in the exam. So it is very much important. The reaction has to be mentioned and also examples also need to be mentioned. Next one is dichrometry. So dichrometry. So why it is called to be dichrometry? Why? Because here, so we are using potassium dichromate. We are using potassium dichromate. That's why we are calling this process as dichrometry. Right? So what is the molecular formula of potassium dichromate? So potassium dichromate is having K2Cr2O7. Okay, so which consists of chromate ions, that is Cr2O7. Here we can see the chromate ion. This is the chromate ion, right? The potassium dichromate is consist of, and this potassium dichromate is a strong oxidizing agent. So that means it can oxidize in the adjacent substance. So, but here this potassium dichromate is highly purified substance and more stable substance than potassium permanganate. Why? Because potassium permanganate and potassium dichromate, both substances are oxidizable substances. That means strong oxidizing substances. But if you compare these two compounds with each other, potassium permanganate, which is more oxidizable substance, that is oxidizing agent than potassium dichromate. So why? What is the reason? So why? Because potassium permanganate is producing higher reduction potential. So higher reduction potential will be produced by potassium permanganate. So that will be around plus 1.52 volts. But whereas in case of potassium dichromate, so which is showing a little lesser reduction potential than potassium permanganate, that is plus 1.33. So that's why due to presence of higher reduction potential, here potassium permanganate is having more oxidizable property. It is acting as a strong oxidizing agent than potassium dichromate comparatively. But both are strong oxidizing agents only. But in these two compounds, potassium permanganate is more oxidizing agent. Okay. But here the potassium dichromate is highly purified substance when it is comparing with the potassium permanganate. So that's why, so when we are seeing highly purified substance, then we can call it as primary standard. Here potassium dichromate is acting as a primary standard substance. So as we have already known in the previous class, that primary standard substances which are highly purified, very stable, and having less hygroscopic nature, right? And also less reactivity. So all properties that this potassium dichromate has, it is very similar to the primary standard solutions. So that's why we can call it as the potassium dichromate as primary standard solution. But whereas in case of potassium permanganate, it is not a primary standard solution. Why? Because it has many impurities, it has very good reactivity, and it is less stable when it is comparing to the potassium dichromate. So that's why potassium permanganate is a secondary standard solution and potassium dichromate is a primary standard solution, right? So this is the dichrometry, so which is coming under redox titration. So in redox titration, acidic medium is very much important. Here we need to maintain acidic medium by adding of diluted sulfuric acid, so which provides acidic medium. So in the presence of acidic medium, here oxidizable substance and reducible substances will be reacting each other and finally forming the products, right? So here we can see the reaction. So reaction is containing a chromium ion, dichromate ion, so which is obtained from the potassium dichromate, and ferrous ion. So dichromate ion is having oxidizable property, is a strong oxidizing agent, and ferrous ion is having reducing property. So that's why this reaction is called to be oxidation reduction reaction, but we are using potassium dichromate, so that's why this is called dichrometry. If you are using potassium permanganate, we can call it as permanganometry, but now we can use dichrometry. So why? Because potassium dichromate will be used here. And this reaction will be performed in the presence of acidic medium. So this is the acidic medium that the reaction is proceeded. So if you are not maintaining acidic medium, so we cannot get any products. So acidic medium is very much important here in redox titrations. So here the potassium dichromate is a primary standard solution. So that's why it is completely 99.9% of purity. It consists of 99.9% of purity. So that's why potassium dichromate will not be getting any standardization procedure. So that means it is already standardized. It is already 100% purified. So that's why potassium dichromate doesn't have any standardization procedures, right? So here this potassium dichromate will be useful for standardizing the other substances. Why? Because this is the primary standard solution. Okay. All right. So that's why here we can see the assay. So what is the assay? So in assay procedure, so we are estimating an analyte. So here we are estimating ferrous ammonium sulfate. So ferrous ammonium sulfate is estimated, right? So by using potassium dichromate. Okay. So here potassium dichromate doesn't have any standardization procedure. This is very much important. Why? Because it is a primary standard solution, right? So here in assay procedure, so what we are doing here, so in assay procedure, so we are estimating analyte. So here the analyte is ferrous ammonium sulfate. So initially we need to take the sample analytic solution. Then we have to add 5 molar H2SO4. So what is this H2SO4 for? So it is for providing acidic medium. Why? Because all redox titrations are performed at acidic medium. Then we are adding an indicator. Phenylanthranilic acid is the indicator here for this reaction. And finally, we can get the color change that is green to purple, right? So what is the titrant solution here? Potassium dichromate is the titrant solution. And what is the titrate solution? Ferrous ammonium sulfate solution is titrate solution. So what is the difference between titrant and titrate? So titrant is the solution which is there in the burette. Titrate is the solution which is there in the conical flask, right? So finally, so by this reaction, so finally here we are estimating ferrous ammonium sulfate by using potassium dichromate. So that's why this is called dichrometry. Okay. So not only the ferrous salts, so we can also estimate iodides. We can also estimate other reducing substances like arsenic trioxide, etc. So this dichrometry is also useful for estimating iodides and arsenic trioxide. So next one is iodimetry. So here this iodimetry is a direct titration method. Here we are adding iodine solution into the titrate solution. So why? Because here iodine is taken as a titrant. So directly we are adding. So that's why this is coming under direct titration method. Okay. But here problem is iodine is a very weak oxidizing agent. This is not a strong oxidizing agent like potassium dichromate or potassium permanganate. It is very weak oxidizing agent. And the solubility of iodine is also very poor. So generally that's why we are using iodine along with potassium iodate. So why? Because the solubility of iodine is very poor in water. Okay. But this oxidizing agent so will be useful for determining reducing substances. This is not strong oxidizing agent. This is reducing substances. Okay, here H3ASO3, that is arsenous acid, so which is a reducing agent, right? So iodine is oxidizing agent and arsenous acid is a reducing agent. Okay. So this is the reaction, so which will be occurred in between iodine and arsenous acid, and arsenous acid is getting converted into arsenic acid. So this is arsenic acid, H3ASO4, and iodine is getting converted into iodide ions. It is getting converted into iodide ions, right? So that's why here iodine is taken as a titrant solution, which is there in the burette, and arsenic trioxide, so which is taken in the conical flask as titrate solution. Okay. So here iodine is a secondary standard solution. Why? Because it has many impurities. a secondary standard solution, so can be standardized with a primary standard solution. Here, arsenic trioxide is a primary standard solution, right? But arsenic trioxide is available in the form of powder. So that's why, so we need to dissolve that powder. So that's why we need to use a specific solvent here. So this arsenic trioxide will be dissolved in NaOH, that is 10 ml of 1 molar NaOH will be useful for dissolving arsenic trioxide. Then we are adding HCl, so to provide acidic medium, but actually here iodimetry is also performed at a neutral medium. So that's why we have already added NaOH, which provides basic medium. Now the solution getting converted into neutral medium after adding of HCl, right? So that means we are maintaining neutral medium here in iodimetry. Then we are adding sodium carbonate. This is very much important. So sodium carbonate will be added here. So here the sodium carbonate is acting as a stabilizing agent. So why? Because here iodine is a very weak oxidizing agent. So it is not immediately so forming a reaction with arsenic acid, right? So that's why here sodium carbonate so will be stabilizing the reaction here. H3AsO3 so will be fastly moving and iodine is very slowly reacting. So that's why here there is an incompatibility is there in between these two compounds, right? So due to presence of weak oxidizing agent, that is iodine. So here the sodium carbonate will be stabilizing this reaction, will be controlling the reaction, will be lowering the rate of reaction so that so iodine can be easily reacting with the other reducing substances. So here the starch will be used here. So starch is used as an indicator, and finally the color change will be blue color to colorless. Why? Because when we are adding starch, so due to presence of iodine in the solution, so immediately starch will be forming a complex with iodine and forming a blue color compound, right? So that means the solution will be getting blue color. But after iodine gets consumed so by this arsenic acid, so there is no iodine molecules are present in the solution. So slowly, so this blue color gets disappeared. Okay, so this is the reason that here the indicate endpoint will be blue color to colorless. And this iodimetry so will be useful for estimating vitamin C in citrus fruits. So this is very much important. Why? Because vitamin C levels are more in the citrus fruits. For example, if you take orange, so orange will be having 12.78 milligrams per 100 ml. Okay, so that means the vitamin C content which is present in orange will be 12.78 milligrams, right? So if you take lemon, so it will be around 12.68. Okay, so how do you know that the amount of vitamin which is there in the orange or lemon? So we can estimate by using iodimetry. And also sulfate ions. So this is actually the sulfate ion, but actually this is the wrong. So here we need to write sulfite ion, SO3 minus, right? SO3 minus sulfite ions. So will be present in the wines, so will also be estimated. So here you can write sulfite ions. Sulfite ions will be there. So what is the use of sulfite ions? So sulfite ions will be useful as a preservative in the wines. So wines will be getting flavor and freshness. So that is mainly due to presence of sulfite ions. So these sulfite ions also will be estimated by iodimetry. And the next one is ethanol. So ethanol is also will be estimated. So which will be produced from distillation processes. So generally fractional distillation will be used for extracting this ethanol for the separation of ethanol from the water. So this ethanol also will be estimated by iodimetry, right? So this iodimetry is a direct type of titration. Why? Because here we are directly adding iodine solution as titrant solution. Okay, so that's why this is a direct type of method. And the next one is iodometry. So here this iodometry is an indirect method. Why? Because here also we are using iodine, but this iodine is not directly added. So see, if you observe closely here, sodium thiosulfate is there. So there is no iodine. We are not adding iodine here as titrant solution. So why? Because this is indirect method, right? So here iodine will be present. So it will be obtained from the reaction. So it will be liberated from the reaction. That liberated iodine will be reacting with sodium thiosulfate. So that's why iodometry is indirect type of titration. Iodimetry is direct type of titration. So here, so iodine is will be liberated from the reaction. So how it will be liberated? So here we can take potassium dichromate and potassium iodide. So this potassium dichromate is used as a strong oxidizing agent. So it is a primary standard solution, right? We have already learned about it. And when we are adding potassium iodide, so what happens? So due to presence of strongly oxidizing agent here, iodine molecules will be liberated from this potassium iodide. Now iodine will be available in the solution. So this iodine will be reacting with sodium thiosulfate. So when it is released from the burette, so now the reaction will be taking place between sodium thiosulfate and iodine and forming sodium tetrathionate. So here iodine is acting as an oxidizing agent and sodium thiosulfate is acting as an reducing agent. But here reducing agent is directly added into the solution, but iodine is not directly adding here. So here iodine will be liberated from this compound, that is potassium iodide, in the reaction. So that's why this is called indirect type of titration. And here also we are using sodium bicarbonate. Sodium bicarbonate will be used. So here the sodium bicarbonate will be acting as a preservative. It will be useful for stabilizing the reaction. It will be lowering the rate of reaction. Why? Because iodine is not an active molecule. It is a weak oxidizing agent. So that's why. So here there is a difference of rate of reaction is there in between these two compounds. So that will be compensated by this sodium bicarbonate. It is acting as a stabilizing agent. And we are also adding concentrated HCl, 5 ml of concentrated HCl. Why? Because we are providing acidic medium, right? So mostly in the redox titration, so we can use acidic medium. We need to provide acidic medium. So here we are adding concentrated HCl. And finally, the color change will be blue to colorless. So here also a starch indicator will be used. So starch indicator will be used. Due to starch indicator, initially it will be getting blue color. Then finally it will be getting colorless. So after consuming of all the iodine molecules which are there in the titrate solution by sodium thiosulfate. So this is about iodometry. And this iodometry method will be useful for determining few important compounds such as chlorinated lime, copper sulfate, chloramine, sodium sulfate, and sodium metasulfate. So this is very much important topic for examination point of view. And the next one is sterimetry. So why it is called to be sterimetry? Why? Because here we are using steric ammonium sulfate. So that's why this is called to be sterimetry. So no need to remember anything. So if you are observing closely, then you can easily identify. So steric ammonium sulfate will be used here. So that's why this method is called to be sterimetry. And this steric ammonium sulfate is also a strong oxidizing agent like potassium trichromate and potassium permanganate. So which possess of bright yellow color. So bright yellow color compound. Steric ions, so will be useful here. These are oxidizing agent which will be oxidizing the adjacent compound. Adjacent compound will be oxidized by this oxidizing agent, but Here, this oxidizing agent will be getting reduced itself and converting into ferrous ions. But the ferric ammonium sulfate is also a secondary standard solution, so which has impurities. So that's why, so before using the ferric ammonium sulfate, so we need to standardize it. For standardizing the secondary standard solution, we should always use a primary standard solution. So here we are using arsenic trioxide, so which is a primary standard solution, which is taken in conical flask. So that's why it is acting as a titrate solution. And ferric ammonium sulfate, which is a secondary standard solution, which is taken in burette. So it is acting as a titrant solution. So now the reaction will be taking place in between these two. But this arsenic trioxide is available in the form of powder. So that's why, so we need to dissolve it in suitable solvent. Then we need to add diluted H2SO4 to provide acidic medium. And finally, we need to add the indicators, that is osmic acid and ferroin sulfate. So we need to add a mixture of indicator, that is osmic acid as well as ferroin sulfate, in which ferroin sulfate is the main indicator, but here osmic acid is acting as a staining agent, right? So after the reaction, after the standardization, so finally, so we can get the end point. So here the end point is pink to pale blue color. So this is about serimetry. So here the serimetry will be useful for determination of oxidizing agents like potassium permanganate and potassium dichromate. So these compounds also will be estimated by using serimetry. And the next one is bromatometry. So in bromatometry, so we are using potassium bromate. So that's why this is called bromatometry. So potassium bromate is also a powerful oxidizing agent. So why? Because so these electronegative compounds such as bromine, fluorine, oxygen, these are all compounds which are there in p orbitals. So which are acting as and strong oxidizing agents. These compounds are having higher redox potentials. So why? Because these compounds will be accepting the electrons which are having higher electronegativity. So that's why these compounds will be accepting electrons easily. So that's why these compounds are called to be a powerful oxidizing agents. So here also potassium bromate, so will be useful for releasing iodine. Okay, so here iodine is not directly added. Here iodine will be liberated in the presence of potassium bromate, but actually the iodine will be liberated from the potassium iodide. So for releasing the iodine from this potassium iodide, so we required one important oxidizing agent, that is potassium bromate. So this reaction is also occurred in the presence of acidic medium. So if you are providing acidic medium, then only we can release the iodine molecules in the solution. So if you're not providing acidic medium, so we cannot get any iodine molecules from this potassium iodide. So finally, in the conical flask, we are getting iodine molecules, and these iodine molecules so will be reacting with sodium thiosulfate. So here sodium thiosulfate is taken as a titrant solution, which is taken in burette. Now the reaction is taking place between iodine and sodium thiosulfate and forming sodium tetrathionate. So here the bromatometry, so potassium bromate is very much important to release the iodine molecule from potassium iodide. And here also, so we are using potassium iodide. So why? Because potassium iodide is releasing iodine molecules. So iodine, if you are, we can take directly iodine, but iodine is having very poor water solubility. So that's why we are taking iodine molecules from this potassium iodide. And here we are adding concentrated HCl solution to provide acidic medium, and indicator will be starch. So that's why here also the color change will be blue to colorless. So this is about bromatometry. So this bromatometry method is also useful for estimating few important pharmaceutical substances such as mepicine, phenol sodium, and salicylate, carbazones. So these all pharmaceutical substances are estimated by using bromatometry. And the final one is iodotometry. So this is not iodometry. This is not iodimetry, iodotometry. So why? Because here we are using potassium iodate. Potassium iodate is present. So that's why this is called iodotometry. So here this potassium iodate reacts quantitatively with iodine molecules and forming iodine, right? So here also we are producing iodine molecules, and these liberated iodine molecules will be reacting with sodium thiosulfate. The same reaction is repeated, but here in the place of potassium bromate, so here we are taking potassium iodate. So if you take potassium bromate, then we can call it as bromatometry. If you take potassium iodate, then it is called to be iodotometry. So here this potassium iodate so will be useful for releasing of iodine molecules from potassium iodide. So why? Because here potassium iodide is releasing iodine molecules and potassium iodate is releasing iodate molecules, that is IO3 minus. And these iodate molecules and iodine molecules are finally forming triiodides, and those triiodides are finally converting into iodine molecules. So here also iodine molecules will be produced from the titrate solution from the reaction, but this is not called to be iodometry. Why? Because so here potassium iodate is used, so that's why this is called to be iodotometry. And this the entire solution will be maintaining acidic medium by adding of sulfuric acid, and indicator is starch, and the color change will be blue to colorless. And this liberated iodine will be titrated with sodium thiosulfate, which is acting as a titrant solution. So this is about iodotometry. So this method is also useful for determining various pharmaceutical substances such as benzalkonium chloride, phenyl hydrogen, HCl, and potassium iodide. So these compounds also will be estimated by using iodotometry. So this is about redox titrations. So we have learned about so what is oxidation, what is reduction, and what is oxidizing agent, what is reducing agent. And we have learned about few important redox titrations such as dichrometry, iodometry, iodotometry, iodimetry, bromatometry, serimetry, right? So we have these 6 methods in our syllabus. So in which iodimetry, iodometry, and cetic ammonium sulfate, these 3 are very much important. So these 3 methods are very much important.